We all know Nepal, right? Everest, trekking, Kathmandu, temples. Yeah, I used to think that too, until I went there and did none of that, because turns out there was something better. An unexpected adventure that started one morning when I got a call and an invitation. An invitation I was unable to say no to, because I pick up the phone to hear the perma-stoked voice of Ryan Shirley. You know him from his insane wildlife footage and epic travel films, and sick moves. Through the phone, he says, "Hey, I'm headed to Nepal to be the first in the world to film wild tigers with a cinema drone that takes 2 people to fly and is worth more than your car. Want to come?" So here is the story of the 2 wildest weeks of my life that I spent among dangerous wildlife in a remote part of the world most people never see. Meeting amazing new friends along the way who taught me the true meaning of living with balance and harmony. Or something like that. I'll work on the title. So it was only after I packed all this shit in a carry-on, landed in Kathmandu, and sat down for dinner with the tiger guides that I realized what I had actually gotten myself into. We discussed the itinerary with no surprises, but then came the safety and logistics. First, tigers are elusive, cunning, and silent. If they don't want to be seen, they won't be. Second, these are apex predators living on land that is protected but not controlled. It is the wild. Third, guides will not have guns or tranquilizers, and should a rare case of tiger aggression occur, they would be armed only with a bamboo stick. I recap in my mind. Okay, so we flew 8,000 miles to spend time among nature's perfect killing machines for footage that might not happen? I look at Ryan to see if he's thinking the same thing, but to my surprise, I just see a glint in his eye. He asked the guide what would be the rarest footage we could get. The guide says, a mother tiger and a cub. Ryan smiled, and I could tell the hunt was on. We had 1 full day in the city before our flight to a small village. But this story isn't about Kathmandu, so I will attempt to describe it in one complete, non-run-on sentence. Kathmandu is a colorful, chaotic city with a fascinating history, rich culture, and beautiful temples with baby-making monkeys. And also the food is great. The airport the next morning was relatively empty, so I assumed it's going to be easy to get through security. But that's only because I had never been packing this much heat before. Getting that massive drone through security took the fixer from the guide company, another guide, and someone from the Nepali government to talk with security staff. They finally let us through, but only after we divided our giant bag of heavy batteries into our carry-on. We get into the air without any more issues, and as we level out, I see something I never had before. I look out the window to see an expansive white sea of clouds, except in the distance, some of them are pointy and those aren't clouds, they're mountains. They are on another level out there, but this story isn't about mountains either. So we touch down in the town of Nepal and pile into the van for the 90-minute drive to the village we'll be staying. As we start the drive, I see another thing I never had before. I had never seen a place like this. The entire town seemed to gather on one main road comprised of concrete buildings painted in bright colors. Outside the buildings was an organized chaos of auto rickshaws, bikes, vans, and carriages pulled by water buffalo. The people dressed in beautiful, vivid linens that I assumed were functional as sun protection just as much as they were fashionable. The climate was a stark contrast to what you might expect after seeing snow-covered mountains. This place is a hot, humid jungle. I had that feeling creep in that, for me, the world was about to get quite a bit bigger. We arrived at Tiger Track Eco Lodge, our stay for the next 10 days. But we didn't get a chance to rest because, as the guides put it, if you want to film tigers, you have to take every chance you have. So we immediately loaded up into the truck and drove down the jungle canopy into what is known as the community zone of Bardia National Park, which is an area surrounding the park where people and wildlife coexist. We tried a few different areas and didn't see any big wildlife, but the scenery was beautiful. And we got to watch a group of water buffalo being herded across the river in the glow of the setting sun. By the way, make a note of the sunsets here because they are the most unique I have ever seen. We got some footage you'll see later. The next morning though, we were going directly to the far edge of Bardia National Park, where the guides thought a tiger might use the river to cool off in the heat. After 30 minutes of driving, I was pretty sure I was going to use the river to cool off too. The heat was a different world. It was 100 degrees, 60% humidity, and it was only 8 in the morning. I was genuinely starting to wonder if I could do this, but something happened that morning that would make me forget about any level of discomfort that I had. Buckle up. We got up on a ridge overlooking the river in the distance, and we got our first real look at how our guides run the operation. First up, Nana, one of the best spotters in the game. On top of that, he's a member of the anti-poaching unit, a solar electrician, and a pretty great guy. Manju and Susila. These sisters are the queens of conservation. They're experts in wildlife and nature, and their conservation efforts are widely recognized on a local and national level. Also great photographers. So with the guys on lookout, Ryan and I decided to get the drone ready just in case. The drone, by the way, is a DJI Inspire 3. We had just put the last propeller on when we hear a shout. Nana is pointing at the river with one hand and holding 4 fingers in the air with the other. We shift our gaze and freeze. 4 orange dots were moving through the far-off river. Tigers. As we race to turn on the drone and controllers, I feel my heart start beating. It was just my luck that my first time ever flying the Inspire would be to film a group of 4 tigers. A shot that would not ever happen again. This was our one chance. Ryan looks at me and says, "You ready?" We take off and start closing the distance to the river when something occurs to me. Didn't the guides tell us that tigers are solitary animals? They don't really socialize or live in groups unless it's... I abruptly look at Nana. He answers my unspoken question by saying, "A mother and 3 cubs." To answer your question, Ryan, no, I was fucking not ready. But I'm gonna try. It was an amazing first day and a huge boost of confidence. In a few days though, I would find out that it was one thing to film these animals from the air, but entirely another when you're filming them while looking them in the eye. The next day passed without any sightings or major wildlife, which was fine. Not every day can be that lucky, and it gave us an opportunity to take in the setting. Lush jungle, open fields, and slow but steady rivers. And the calmness. I wish you could experience this type of calmness, so I'll try to describe it. First, think of all the annoying sounds in your life. Cars, leaf blowers, people watching TikTok on speaker instead of headphones. Now replace all of that with nothing but the quiet ripples of steady moving water and the occasional distant cry of a peacock. It was serene. And yeah, I get that it's a small village, but go to a small town in the US and it's not the same. There was something more going on here. It just took me a while to figure out what it was. The downtime also gave me a chance to talk with the guides about their life here. They told me so many interesting things that there's just too much for this video, so instead, here's a rapid fire of my favorite things that I learned. Manju told me that before the village got reliable electricity a decade ago, people would meet up and do their laundry in the river and use it as an excuse to hang out with their friends and catch up. Reliable is relative, by the way. The power does go out a couple times a day. I asked Manju, Susila, and Nana what they do in their free time. They said they don't get a lot, but if they do, they mostly just go look for animals. They are all about this life. Also, when we were driving one day, they pointed out the plants on the side of the road. It was marijuana, straight weed growing freely throughout the village. And they said that once a year, the village smokes it as part of a holiday tradition. Awesome. And lastly, on a more serious note, I talked with the owner of the lodge, Hemant, and he explained to me the importance that community holds in their culture. He pointed out the bread and pastries that we ate every day were from a local bakery, something he helped get started and then agreed to be their repeat customer. He also, very sadly, had a family member die during an unfortunate encounter with an elephant. And despite that, he holds an elected position on the local council with a goal of improving the lives of both humans and animals. Everyone here is committed. So a few days pass and we get our second chance to film a tiger. We got the shot and we all laughed a little because this thing was just a big ol' orange kitty. More tiger footage was awesome, but the next few days would lead to encounters with animals that were quite a bit bigger. The first one was in the early morning. We were driving through an area with thick vegetation and limited visibility. We turned a corner and Sucida immediately gives the driver the wordless signal to shut the truck off. The giant mass of an elephant was blocking the road. They normally aren't aggressive, especially if you leave them alone, but they do sometimes charge. And we were on a narrow road in a slow, heavy truck. We had no escape. So the smart thing would be stay still until it walked away. But we didn't do that. I immediately turned on both my cameras and Ryan pulls out the smaller drone, which he flew very slowly, but only once the guides determined it was safe. In the end, it was uneventful. The elephant slowly turned and walked away, but it was my first time seeing an elephant in the wild. We also caught a glimpse of an entire herd, and lucky for us, one of them walked to the edge of a clearing. The next big encounter happened at the river in the community zone. We were looking for tigers off in the distance when, much closer to us, we saw movement in the trees. Suddenly, a massive rhino casually walks out into the open. I was probably supposed to feel shocked and excited, but I was a little preoccupied with another thought. Do rhinos live in Nepal? I guess they do. While I grabbed my camera, I noted just how little I knew about this country. I followed Manju's lead to safely and quietly get a little closer for the shot. The watch party at dinner that night was another good one. So was the dinner itself for that matter, and every meal we had had since we arrived. In fact, we were all so impressed by it that we asked who the chef was. We thought we had met all the staff at this point, but after the meal, we were greeted by the smiling face of Vinod, the 24-year-old culinary prodigy. So we were well taken care of on the food side. But over the next few days, some doubts actually started creeping in about the footage we were getting. We had fairly regular tiger sightings, but the problem is that they were too far away or too hidden to use the Inspire. We realized that the shot that would make or break this trip was a tiger that was relatively close and out in the open so that we could use the Inspire. The next day would give us one of those things, and it's a day I will not forget. A nearby ranger told our guides that there was a tiger in the area, and if we hurried, we might be able to get a shot of it walking through the clearing. We decided to split up to see if I can get a ground shot with the camera. As we were walking over, I realized my camera wasn't turning on even with a fully charged battery. The tiger is moving, so I do the only thing I can think of and sprint back to the truck for Ryan's camera. I then have to swap lenses as I'm running back and just pray that the tiger hadn't arrived yet. I get there and there's no tiger yet, but now I have to dial in settings on a camera I had never used before, and I have to do it with shaking hands and a racing heart. I had just figured out the exposure when I see the guide's hand shoot over my shoulder, pointing and excitedly whispering, "Right there." The tiger hadn't walked into the clearing. It had walked along the edge of the clearing right toward us. I hit record and I see a glimpse of orange emerge silently from the trees. And after that, it was gone without ever making a sound. It was difficult for my mind to accept what had just happened. I had looked into the face of the apex of nature. And I was close. We went back later to make sure I wasn't exaggerating. I was 30 feet from a wild tiger with nothing but a camera in front of me. That moment made me feel something because that animal was not aggressive to me, but it also was not afraid of me. It confidently reminded us that it lives here too, and that realization hit hard. We share this earth with living, feeling, breathtaking creatures, and they deserve to live their lives in this world that we share with them. I went to bed never guessing that our last day had one more surprise for us. Most of our last day was uneventful. As the sun started to get low in the sky, we decided our last battery for the Inspired could be used to get some shots of the team and the landscape. So we flew the drone out and far away from us for a big open shot. And we were bringing it back towards us for a close-up when one of the guides just happened to look in the river behind us. A lone, full-grown tiger was crossing. At the moment, it was in the middle of the river, and if we could get the drone to it before it gets out of the water on the other side, then we could get a shot of it in the open for a few moments before it gets to the cover of the trees. The shot we had been waiting for. On our last day, with our last battery. We divert the drone over us and towards the river, which gives me a small window to dial in settings. I'm frantically tapping buttons, trying to ignore my beating heart when I get a flashback to my first day. I will not get a chance for the shot ever again in my life. But this time, I'm more than ready. We brought the drone in for the last time and went back to the lodge to celebrate over dinner. In the morning, we said our goodbyes. We had all met as strangers only 10 days ago, but it truly felt like we were leaving as friends. A drive, a flight, and another flight later, and I was stepping out into the Mediterranean air of Rome. There's nothing quite like the heart of Western civilization to make you reflect on everything you had just learned and felt in the East. I came to Nepal expecting an adventure, and I did get that, but I also got so much more. I'd spent time in a place that felt like worlds away from the life I'm used to. Things that previously had only ever existed for me in books, pictures, and zoos were somehow made real. Living, feeling things, living their lives, but coexisting with humans. Their world is disappearing, and it's because we keep abusing it. I'm not really one to know how to make that stop. I just know it has to. And I think it's going to take learning from each other's cultures to make that happen. Because where I'm from, we tend to value things like strength, grind, and independence. Where I just traveled to had opened my eyes to things like endurance, balance, and unity. Is one better than the other? Or maybe asking that question is just missing the point entirely. Because thinking about it now, if I had to put everything I had felt in Nepal into one word, it would be harmony. We need both sides. Push and pull. Light and dark. Life and death.